From Hamilton Place Strategies in Washington, D.C., this is the HPS Insights Podcast.
Welcome to HPS Insights, a podcast from Hamilton Place Strategies, analyzing the current events impacting the business and political communities. I'm your host today, Bryan and DeAngelis. I'm Managing Director here at HPS, and I'm joined by our normal Macrocast host and our founding partner, Tony Fratto. And we're excited. We're hosting a good friend of ours today for a discussion on current state of the economy and the Biden administration's plans for his cabinet, including his economic picks. Our friend Steve Adamske, who is here from FIA. And Steve, we're excited to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Wherever here is, right? And time and place doesn't matter anymore. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation.
That's right. Well, it's great. It's great to have you. We're excited. We've known each other for a while, but your background, both working at FIA, but you previously had worked at the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. You were a Deputy Assistant Secretary at the Treasury Department. Longtime aide to former Congressman Barty Frank from my home state of Massachusetts. I think we'll have a great conversation today. So why don't I just kick it off? Tell us a little bit more about your background and your current work at FIA.
Well, thank you, Bryan, and thank you, Tony. I appreciate this a lot. I currently work as the global head of communications for what's called the Futures Industry Association. Futures are derivatives, those really bad things that happened in 2008. Actually, futures are the good things that happened in 2008 because there wasn't a big problem with the futures market. There was a big problem with the swaps market, but that's hardly distinguishable to your average voter. Futures are financial products that are bought and sold, commodity-based, bought and sold, and help companies hedge the price of risk. Farmers and ranchers use them to lock in prices for agriculture and other commodities. And so we are a worldwide organization.
It's trading places. It's the seed and trading places.
Trading places, yes, which is an incredibly racist and homophobic movie, but it does have a very, very important part at the end of it, which is when Mortimer had to make a margin call. So futures are day to day. They are not like stocks that you have to collect or post margin at the end of the day. So these are very institutional products that we were. So this is a very B2B industry, a non like retail, kind of people aren't on their Robinhood or TD Ameritrade, apps.
Right.
Saying, what's going on?
I've gotten a little too addicted to Robinhood during this pandemic.
It is addicting. We can debate whether that's good or bad, but it's probably bad. An interesting way. Yes.
I do. I'm repeating myself, but I'm excited about this conversation because it struck me preparing for it. All three of us were there in 2008. We're in slightly different spots. Tony, you were in the White House. Steve, you were on the House side with Frank, and I was working with Senator Dodd at the time. And obviously, we had what was an economic crisis we thought would be a once-in-a-generation crisis. And literally 12 years later, we're kind of in a even bigger once-in-a-generation economic crisis. So I'm curious to hear from you two, how this compares to what we all saw and lived through in 2008 and 2009, even 10. And, what's really different about it this time?
Mm-hmm. I'll let Tony say, but the number one big difference in that is that we had this year we had a rapid reduction in jobs. They just went away. People just stayed home. They didn't go to restaurants. Whole staffs got fired, got laid off. And in 2008, we had, that was a secondary problem with the financial crisis. So we had a systemic risk issue staring us right in the face, where we had the possibility of major investment firms, investment companies falling like dominoes that would have triggered a global recession that we haven't seen since the 1930s, right? So, I mean, so that was so we have different triggering events, right? We had, somebody slamming on the brakes. This year we have somebody slamming on the brakes, going 60 miles an hour, and we just stopped. And
literally pushing the eject button.
Literally pushing the eject button, exactly right. Right. But in 2008, it was more slow moving, where you had a build up to it. And then you had some events happen in the fall of 2008, especially in September of 2008, starting on exactly September 14th, 2008, and then cascading very, very quickly with a economic rescue that took a long time to get people back to work. We have yet to see how we're going to rescue this economy. We have various things going on in Congress. We have the vaccine coming out. So hopefully people will go back to bars and restaurants and airplanes and cruise ships and do all the things that they want to do anyway, and buy NFL tickets and if you're a Steelers fan, last night was a little tough, but
don't bring it up.
We'll have to see. But the after effects of the financial crisis on Main Street was very, very tough, and it took a long time to get people, back to work again.
Yeah, I think there are differences. I guess one of them, I mean, people forget that, so you dated the crisis to September, and that's true. But we obviously had, the Bear Stearns failure actually in March of that year. Fannie and Freddie in summer. We were in a recession already. Like we had already done, early in 2008 had already done, especially by today's standards, a small stimulus bill. But there was a stimulus package. And so it was a long moving thing. And then you have the kick in the head to the economy of Lehman Brothers and WAMU and AIG and others, and that whole ugly weekend that everybody talks about. But it was a long time coming. This was sharp, and I would say that it's something we didn't have in 2008. We didn't have any experience with something like it. I mean, the only thing to compare it to was the Great Depression, and nobody been around, from there. This time we have we went through the crisis. Some of the work that your bosses did, and in Obama administration, and that the banks did with themselves on, liquidity and capital and other things to shore up the banking system, made them resilient this time. So they were able to learn some things, and they were able to look for clues for the kinds of things that might cause trouble. And regulators, the Fed, and others could look for those clues and give guidance and direction to the banks so that the problem doesn't get worse. Like that was we're talking about exactly the same people in a lot of these. A lot of the positions from 10 or 12 years ago are still in government today, and were able to play good roles. So that was different,
including the president-elect. Right, he was vice president-elect, and moving into another similarity. This both happened at the backdrop of a presidential election, and moving into a period when a new administration, a new political party would take power. I think 12 years ago, we had much better cooperation between the Bush White House and the incoming Obama administration. But Tony, to that point, and I want Steve's take on this too, Yellen's been through this before. A lot of the folks that Biden's staffing up with, Wally Ademo, Deputy Treasury Secretary nominee right now, certainly Bernstein and others. These folks have been through it. Talk to us a little bit about, what they're thinking of right now and preparing.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I was this has been my my view on this is that it was the Obama administration when you guys came in, Steve, you You guys had some people with, with good experience. You also had some new people who were not, from the Clinton administration. But because the Obama administration ended just 4 years ago, there's a lot of talent out there that hadn't left town, and really, really good people. You mentioned some of them, Bryan, obviously, Janet Yellen is, super experienced, the most experienced person for that job. Wally is, super talented, really good person. Is going to be in that job. But every person nominated through this administration has prior experience. They are going to be able to jump on the bicycle without having to stop. The pedals can keep moving, and so and that's even with, to put it lightly, not a smooth transition process going on here with the outgoing Trump administration. Is that right?
I completely
agree with.
Kind of lightly, yeah.
I completely agree with Tony. I think that he's assembling the president-elect is assembling a team that can more than hit the ground running and who have this knowledge of experience both in economics but also in the reality of how to get things done. I do actually so that I don't think there's a better group of people. Deese obviously is enormously talented. Janet Yellen has impeccable.
Yeah.
I hope that they do what they did on the campaign, though, which is to put down the Twitter machine, turn it off, and also head out in the country, and go and talk to the Economic Club of Detroit and spend some time in housing projects and do some different things that I think the Obama administration early in the beginning, because they were so crisis focused, missed an opportunity to kind of go out and connect with the country and go out and spend some time on a tractor, spend some time talking to pork producers and at the Minneapolis Grain Exchange, and to get out into the real economy where people are working, and to factory floors and other kinds of things. Tim Geithner, when he took over the Treasury Department, probably was the best person in the country, one of the best people in the country to take over at that crisis, at that time. He had the contacts, he had the knowledge, he had where things were, but he missed a piece of it, and it's not his fault. He was never designed to do this, but to get off the Acela and to go out and talk about the president's economic plan. This is what our vision is. This is what our plan is. This is how we want to get people back to work. This is what we're going to be doing, and that's an essential piece of doing it. And the campaign's over. It's governing time, but you still got to bring people together, and you still got to bring the folks together. So I hope that they do that. I hope that they when we're able to travel again safely and easily, but to also, make sure that we're going out and talking to people and getting business leaders, on your side and people in the real economy.
Yeah, and it's going to be a long road back. I think people have been, there's been a lot of complacency because of the sharpness of the recovery to that, don't say to this point, we're past the point. To the recovery up to a couple months ago. And now I think we're in the flattening hard part of the recovery with still, 10 million people unemployed and increasing numbers of people long-term unemployed and permanently unemployed. The people who had jobs to go back to have pretty much gone back to them. A lot of people hanging out there. So I think that's right. And I think we're seeing lots of signs of this. People have been, rifled through the alphabet for how to describe what the recovery is. They settled on K, and I think K is the right letter. We are seeing two recoveries. My recovery's gone well. I've been able to work through it. There are companies that need us, and so we're doing okay. The recovery for a lot of other Americans, millions of Americans, has not gone well. It's gone very poorly, and they are in real need.
Yeah, I mean, the stimulus package that they're talking about on Capitol Hill right now should be referred to as the first stimulus. I mean, there's going to have to be successive elements of this while the vaccine is being rolled out, while then retail and restaurants and other travel and tourism and those kind of sectors begin to ramp back up again and hold the thing. But I'm struck by when you see these food lines on TV, people pulling up in their cars for food. How many late model SUVs and trucks and cars are in those lines? And so there's a lot of people in this country, and this is something that's very different from the Depression generation. There's a lot of people in this world who are living on credit, who do not have savings, and are not as fortunate as we are. And so you are seeing people who are living paycheck to paycheck, even though they have car payments, and you know, I have no idea how they're going to send their kids to college. But you know, that is we're going to have to build this back up brick by brick.
Well, that's a great point, but let's take a break there. I want to come back and talk a little bit more about that recovery and what Congress can do. I completely agree, Steve. I think we need to do something now. I think we're going to need to do something in February and March. So we'll take a quick break. You're listening to HPS Insights, and we'll be back in a moment.
Every 2 weeks, HPS measures U.S. adults' feelings and expectations for the economy. The HPS Civic Science Economic Sentiment Index accurately measures movements in overall national economic sentiment and provides a more sophisticated alternative to existing economic sentiment indices. To learn more, contact us through hamiltonplacestrategies.com.
We're back on HPS Insights. Our guest today is Steve Adamske, and we're talking about the economic recovery and the Biden administration's plans to get the economy back on track following the pandemic. Steve, thanks again for being here. I want to pick up where we just left off. So Congress has just a few days here to figure out if they're going to do another stimulus and a government funding bill before they break and the new Congress comes in January. And President-elect Biden has promised an economic stimulus will be one of the first things on his agenda. First, let's talk about the need for stimulus now. We've got the so-called COVID cliff hitting at the end of the month with unemployment benefits and other benefits for folks, much needed in my opinion, expiring. And then what's the likelihood that they actually do something in this partisan environment?
I think in this partisan environment, I think it's anything guess. I imagine that they will put together some kind of package on or around the funding deadline, which I think is, or extend the funding deadline by a week or so. And it would be hard for me to believe that they'll go out without sort of doing anything. I mean, maybe hope springs eternal, but I really think that they'll come out with some kind of a half measure, or maybe not the full $900 billion, but some kind of where people can go home and say we did something. And then beyond that, I mean, there's still going to be a need for rental assistance. There's still going to be a need for increased unemployment assurances. There's still going to be a need for doing what we can to get people, back to work. Hopefully, longer term than that, we can, hopefully there can be a consensus on an infrastructure plan, something that can rebuild things, put people back to work. Fully funding the California high-speed rail program, and was creating 5,000 jobs in Central Valley of California right now, where there is no economic activity than agriculture. And hopefully they can come together on something that works for everyone. We've been in a very hyper-partisan environment for many years, but all they can do is continue to hopefully bring the country together, pressure members of Congress to be doing something, it's not going to save itself, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I think you're 100% right. And it's a little bit of a lesson learned from 08 and 09 of we, sort of probably went a little small on the stimulus package. We were in the mix of that. We all did what could get done at that time.
I was happy that I was on record at the time saying it was small. I said it was about half as big as it needed to be, but also could have been constructed better too. So it wasn't without any criticism.
Yeah,
no, I think you're completely right about that. And I also thought there were many people. I mean, Christina Romer, when she wrote sort of her post time at the Obama administration, said, we always thought there was a second bite at that apple, even though a lot of us didn't think there would be a second bite at that apple. But there was some kind of thought, at least at the time, that there would be, more stimulus if need be.
How so just pivoting off that for a second, you both worked in Treasury.
We had the same job. We had the same job.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, I stuck around to get promoted again, but Steve left. But yeah, we were both deputy assistant secretaries of the Treasury.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That's right.
It's a great job.
So talk to me a little bit about
one of the best jobs in Washington. I think
so.
Yeah.
Is that going to be true for the next guy in this environment?
That particular job is a really terrific job, and as long as we're talking about Treasury, and I think we'd agree, it's one of the special places to work in Washington. It's much smaller than people realize. People talk about the sort of the big four or big three of state, defense, and Treasury. Treasury is the only job where is a deputy assistant secretary. You might see the secretary every day. It's a small, tight group, and you work with everybody. You get to know everybody. I'm sure Steve knows everybody who worked there at that time and probably stays in touch with them today. And there's no way not to. It's a really special place to work. So yeah, whoever ends up in those jobs, I think we'll probably reach out to him or her and offer guidance and assistance and help. But it's a terrific opportunity for whoever goes there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that you kind of took the question right out of my mouth. So I wanted to ask about Yellen and her ability to kind of lead the efforts on another stimulus package, but also what advice both of you would have for those coming into that position, and also does soon to be Secretary Yellen herself.
Don't be so presumptuous to give somebody with such an accomplished resume as Janet Yellen to be. But I would say that to not ignore the public relations element of the job. This is something that somebody at the president of the San Francisco Fed or chairman of the Federal Reserve does not have to do, does not have to travel around the country and talk about what they're doing, about where the future jobs are going to come from, how are they going to build back better, how are they going to rebuild manufacturing jobs in that, and then go on up to Capitol Hill and convince people of that, having small group meetings, building a governing coalition. Those are things you don't have to do at the Federal Reserve, and that's good, right? Because you want them focused on the macroeconomy and the microeconomy. You want them sort of detached from the politics of it, not detached from reality, but from the politics of it. So, the first order of business is to build a governing coalition who can get some of these things done, and not to ignore the public relations element to this as some kind of PR or trying to get good things, but it's an element of governing that is sorely needed. And you look at the way Tony set up Mike Paulson to be, that front person up there every day talking to the speaker. Speaker Pelosi still talks about how Paulson used to come and brief her all the time on what was going on, where the things were, what was happening in the economy, where the country was going, and it was this collaborative effort. And I hope that Janet Yellen is out there, is mixing it up with members of Congress, not in a political sense, not in the yelling sense, but in a building governing coalitions.
It's such a great point. It is the thing that's different, that's distinctly different. And one other area also I would say is that every single Treasury Secretary I've gotten to know has been surprised by one part or another of Treasury. And, there's obviously a lot of focus on domestic policy. There's international economic policy, which Janet Yellen does both of those very well. She, when she goes to the G7 finance ministers meeting in the spring or in February, whenever it is, it will not be the first time. She, because central bank governors go to those meetings as well. So she's been to 15 of these things. So she'll be comfortable there. That the enforcement side of Treasury, terrorist finance, financial crime, the intelligence network, the money laundering, financial crimes, that piece of it is not the thing that economists spend their time on, and a lot of others. So that's the learning curve, and then they find out that the Treasury plays a very big role in national security and sanctions programs and those kinds of things. So that's part of the learning curve. The other part is a part that people really will see that Steve talked about. You have to, you are the economic spokesman for the administration, and I would always tell people, accepting the enforcement side, we actually don't do a lot. We're like a giant think tank. We make policy, we talk about policy, we sell paper, but it's not like we have guns and tanks and airplanes or, those kinds of things. We don't have diplomats all over the world, right? It's kind of a really important think tank next to the White House, and communicating that stuff and communicating to the country and to policymakers that's a really important part of the job. And she'll have her own style. I think, I'm sure she'll do well, but only if, as Steve says, if she gives attention to it and understands how important it is.
And to get, I'll say this again, I know I'm a broken record, but to get out in the country and to tour factories, spend time on a tractor, talk to pork producers, whether they voted for you or not, and to take at heart what Joe Biden said. I will be, I'm president of the entire country, and whether you voted for me or not. And so, and to put down the Twitter machine, and to get off the Acela, and to really spend some time out there with factory workers. You may not move the dial a whole bunch when it comes to votes in Congress, but at least you're going out there and you're talking about where the jobs are going to come from, and you're bringing people along with you. And that's a tall order for. So what the president needs to be doing is what the NEC needs to be doing, but it's also what the Treasury Secretary needs to be doing. And there's a lot. Tony will tell you there's. It's hard to carve those pieces of time out. You travel a lot, you testify a lot, you get up there, you have meetings all the time, you have to be in the White House all the time, but making sure that you're carving out those times to do that kind of circuit of conversations is huge.
Well, Steve, on that point, and in our final minutes here before we let you go, how should that same thought be applied throughout the rest of the financial infrastructure of the administration? How should CFPB and CFTC and SEC and others think about that holistic view of helping the entire country recover from this pandemic?
That's tough. It's tough for someone who's going to become the FDIC chairman to go out and say, where the economy is going and that kind of thing. So I would say that's less happening with the independent regulatory agencies. We tried that a little bit with Gary Gensler, trying to make this a little bit larger than what our remit was, and he shut it down every single time. And we had a big public relations battle in terms of making sure that people knew we were going to regulate derivatives, and they were such a big problem in 2008, and people knew that. That was not a education that we had to do. What the education we had to do was make sure that people knew we were going to make them, safer. We weren't going to eliminate things, because that's not what the remit was from Congress, but we were going to make things safer. We were going to make things better, and that's that has proved out throughout this crisis. And this is what we have done a lot of times. The system got strained in March because you can't have that big economic schism and not have that ripple up and down the monetary system. But it got strained, but it didn't break. And that was very heartening for a lot of us who've been doing this for a while. But I hope the White House thinks that, and also are appointing people who will be thinking that where are the jobs going to come from in the 21st century? Where are we going to create high quality, high paying, jobs? How are we going to build affordable housing? Because in some parts of the country, California, New York, some of the higher cost places are just becoming out of reach, right? How are people going to send their kids to college? Which are not, the college educations are not going down. They're only going to go up, right? And so something I'm thinking about, something Tony has thought about and paid for to a certain degree. It's not easy, and so it requires a lot of sacrifice. But how can we get people not living paycheck to paycheck to paycheck? How can we get people that we have, where are those jobs going to come from in the future?
Yeah, great. Well, Steve, we really appreciate you joining us today. Thank you for lending your expertise to another great conversation. Tony, thank you as well. And thanks to all our listeners for tuning in to another episode of HPS Insights. You can find out more about Hamilton Place Strategies work and our podcast at hamiltonplacestrategies.com or by following us on Twitter at HPS Insight. I'm your host, Bryan DeAngelis, and as always, thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the HPS Insights podcast, produced by Hamilton Place Strategies. For the latest updates, follow us on Twitter at HPS Insight and visit us on the web at hamiltonplacestrategies.com.